Good morning, I'm Remo, and this is the Daily Signal for November 27th, 2025. We're starting with breaking news. Hong Kong is in crisis as a massive apartment fire leaves 27 dead and dozens fighting for their lives, forcing authorities to declare a state of emergency. Stay tuned for the rest of today's explosive headlines.
Unfiltered. Now,
Here are 9 more critical stories breaking right now. Military coup unfolds in Guinea-Bissau. Armed soldiers storm presidential palace. 18 killed in overnight fighting. President flees the country. Louvre heist expands. 4 more arrests in Paris, but $88 million crown jewels remain. Missing as authorities scramble. Japan's defense minister triggers crisis, says Japan will defend Taiwan if China attacks, sending tensions soaring in the Taiwan Strait. Putin delivers ultimatum, demands Ukraine recognize Crimea as Russian and abandon NATO dreams in exchange for ceasefire. Trump creates diplomatic chaos, publicly disinvites South Africa from 2026 G20 summit. African Union threatens mass boycott. Niger hostage crisis deepens. 3 bodies found as Catholic bishop blasts Nigeria's failed rescue operations. Jakarta overtakes Tokyo as world's most populous city. UN warns of environmental collapse as 37 million people strain infrastructure. Italy passes explosive femicide law. Life sentences approved amid massive protests calling it anti-male. Gaza hostage situation intensifies. Israeli father's body returned as families storm Tel Aviv, demanding government action. These stories are developing fast. Let's get the critical details you need to know. We begin with the devastating scene unfolding right now in Hong Kong. What authorities aren't telling you is that this isn't just a tragic accident. It's exposing a citywide safety crisis that could affect millions. A 12-story residential building in Kowloon became a death trap overnight. 27 people are confirmed dead, over 40 injured, with 12 in critical condition. But here's what's truly shocking. 200 firefighters battled flames for 12 hours before getting it under control. The human cost is staggering. 15 survivors were rescued from upper floors by helicopter. Imagine being trapped that high with fire below and nowhere to go. Search teams are still combing through the wreckage, looking for missing residents. But this is far worse than initially reported. Building safety violations are suspected. We're talking about lack of fire escapes and emergency exits. The public is furious. Protests have erupted outside the site, with families demanding answers from the government. Hong Kong's chief executive just declared a state of emergency and ordered immediate inspections of all high-rise apartments. This could mean thousands of buildings across the city. The implications are staggering. If similar safety violations are found citywide, we could be looking at a massive evacuation crisis, affecting millions of residents. This story is still unfolding with new casualties being discovered. Meanwhile, another situation is spiraling out of control in West Africa. A military coup is underway in Guinea-Bissau, and the violence is escalating by the hour. Armed soldiers stormed the presidential palace in Bissau overnight, declaring what they're calling a temporary suspension of constitutional order. But there's nothing temporary about the bloodshed. 18 soldiers and civilians are dead, with dozens wounded in fierce fighting between coup leaders and loyalist forces. President Umaro Sissoco Embalo has fled to an undisclosed location. The coup leaders promise free elections within 12 months, but we've heard that before in West Africa. What's truly alarming is the regional implications. The UN is warning of spreading instability, and ECOWAS is threatening sanctions. This isn't happening in isolation. Guinea-Bissau has a history of coups, and this latest takeover could trigger a domino effect across the region. Sources confirm that neighboring countries are scrambling to secure their borders as refugees begin fleeing the violence. The situation is deteriorating rapidly as we speak, with reports of continued gunfire in the capital. Adding to today's chaos, the Louvre heist, already one of the most audacious art thefts in history, just got even more explosive. 4 more suspects have been arrested in Paris, bringing the total to 11 people now linked to the theft of crown jewels worth $88 million. But here's what authorities don't want you to know. Those priceless jewels are still missing, and the thieves may have already moved them out of the country. New details reveal the scope of this operation. DNA evidence links the suspects to a helmet left at the crime scene, and one suspect was caught at Charles de Gaulle Airport trying to flee to Algeria. This wasn't just a robbery, it was a carefully orchestrated international operation. The Louvre has been forced to transfer its remaining crown jewels to the Bank of France for safekeeping. Security has been increased citywide as authorities fear copycat attacks on other museums. What's truly shocking is that despite 11 arrests, investigators believe the masterminds are still at large. This could mean more heists, more arrests, and a growing black market for stolen cultural treasures. But that's not the only crisis deepening today. Japan's defense minister just triggered a potential military confrontation with China that could reshape the entire Pacific region. In what she's now calling off-the-cuff remarks, Sanae Takaichi declared that Japan will defend Taiwan if China attacks. Those 12 words have sent shockwaves across Asia and could fundamentally alter the balance of power. China has condemned the remarks as dangerous provocation, and tensions in the Taiwan Strait are soaring. The U.S. is urging restraint, but damage may already be done. Japan's prime minister is trying to distance himself from Takaichi's comments, but China isn't buying it. This is far more serious than a diplomatic slip-up. Military analysts warn that Takaichi's comments could give China justification for aggressive action, potentially triggering the very conflict she was discussing. In related breaking news, Vladimir Putin just delivered what sources are calling his final peace offer, and it's an ultimatum that could determine whether this war ends or escalates beyond control. At Geneva peace talks, Putin's envoy signaled willingness to accept a ceasefire, but only if Ukraine recognizes Crimea as Russian territory and permanently abandons NATO membership. Ukraine has already rejected these terms as unacceptable. Here's what makes this critical. The US and EU are warning of major escalation if these talks fail. Russian troops are massing near the Ukrainian border, and Ukraine has declared a state of emergency in response. Sources confirm our worst fears. This may be Putin's final diplomatic offer before launching a renewed military offensive. The crisis deepens as we turn to explosive diplomatic fallout from President Trump's latest move. As host of the 2026 G20 summit in Miami, Trump has publicly disinvited South Africa, calling their stance anti-Western. The reaction has been swift and devastating. South Africa condemns the move as racist and imperialist, and the African Union is threatening to boycott the entire summit. Even the U.S. State Department is trying to distance itself, calling Trump's decision unofficial. This could destroy the G20's credibility and split the international community along racial and economic lines. If African nations boycott, other developing countries may follow, leaving only Western powers at what's supposed to be a global economic summit. Meanwhile, tragedy strikes in Niger, where a hostage crisis has turned deadly. 3 bodies have been found from a group of 12 Nigerians kidnapped by jihadist groups. A Catholic bishop is publicly blasting Nigeria's military for failing to rescue the hostages, calling for international intervention. Jihadist groups have claimed responsibility, and the UN warns of spreading violence across West Africa. This is part of a larger pattern of kidnappings and terrorist activity that's destabilizing the entire region. In a historic development with alarming implications, Jakarta has officially overtaken Tokyo as the world's most populous city with 37.2 million residents. But experts are warning of environmental and social collapse if growth continues unchecked. The Indonesian government has announced an emergency urban renewal plan as the city struggles with overcrowding, pollution, and infrastructure that can't handle the massive population. Italy just passed a landmark femicide law imposing life sentences for killing women, but it's triggered massive protests from conservative groups calling it anti-male. The law comes after a surge in femicide cases in 2025, and activists are hailing it as a victory. However, the political backlash could determine whether other countries follow Italy's lead in addressing violence against women. Finally, the Gaza situation intensifies as the body of Israeli hostage Dror Or, a devoted father and cheesemaker, has been returned in a prisoner exchange. Families of remaining hostages are protesting in Tel Aviv, demanding government action. Hamas is demanding the release of more prisoners, while Israel vows retaliation. The Gaza border remains extremely tense with potential for renewed violence. This is all part of a bigger picture emerging today. We're seeing multiple global crises converging at once. From Hong Kong's safety emergency to military coups in Africa, from diplomatic breakdowns to hostage situations, the world is facing unprecedented instability. What connects these stories is the breakdown of established order, whether it's building safety regulations, democratic governments, or diplomatic protocols. Each crisis could trigger larger consequences affecting millions of people worldwide. The Hong Kong fire exposes citywide safety failures that could require massive evacuations. The Guinea-Bissau coup threatens regional stability across West Africa. The Louvre heist reveals international criminal networks targeting cultural treasures. And diplomatic crises from Trump's G20 moves to Japan's Taiwan, comments show how quickly tensions can escalate. These aren't isolated incidents. They're symptoms of larger systemic failures that could reshape global politics, economics, and security in the coming months. We'll continue monitoring these developing situations as they unfold. This is Remo with the Daily Signal. Stay informed, stay safe, and we'll see you tomorrow with the latest breaking developments.
Unfiltered.